Gassy Knoll back there, right? Can you hear me pretty good? Okay, good. So I get asked a lot of questions, and I'm all over this country right now. Like, you know, I was in Georgia till midnight last night with a bunch of people way up in North Georgia, close to the Tennessee border. And I get asked this a lot, and I'm going to answer it. And the question is, what do I do? Right? What can I do? So you've been hearing that from a lot of people up here today, and I just want to go over some of these people. I mean, Kimberly Fletcher, Moms for America. Yeah, is Kimberly still here? Yeah. So you know, like these, she's got her little, you know, flyers, brochures here. When she finished, a few people came up and grabbed them. I mean, if you want to help somebody, help Kimberly Fletcher, Moms for America. She's been around since 2004. She's a grounded nonprofit. She works her rear end off. She's got a national organization in all 50 states. You know, if I got a problem in one state in this country, I can call Kimberly up and say, who's your mom in whatever state? And she makes a phone call, and they're right there. Okay, but I will tell you, we are millions of us facing trillions of dollars. As Alfie Oakes said, in this business about conservative dollars, right? Because some of you don't know how to serve. Some of you will not be able to, just because it's not in your fiber, it's not in your makeup. And you know what? That's okay. It's not something that I totally understand, because that's hard for me to understand. But I have compassion for people that are in that position, and it might be for a variety of personal reasons, and that's okay. But one way that you can serve, when all those letters come into your mailbox asking for $1 from whatever, this organization or that organization, you start looking at the people that you're hearing, like people like Kimberly or these others, the mama bears from Iowa, right? So you start looking at these people that are standing up as champions for this country. I mean, what is the matter with America first, right? What is the matter with saying America first? But I will tell you, we have a whole bunch of people, about 75 members of the 535 who are in Congress are members of the Democratic Socialist Party of America. Now, you don't even know that. Everybody goes to Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders. There's a ton of them. There's a lot of them. They're members of a socialist party. So, there's been things that have been happening in this country that we've sort of given up on. We've sort of forgotten about. We've taken for granted. So Kimberly Fletcher, Iowa Bears, Kimberly Reichs, and Emily, and they're beautiful children. I mean, they're beautiful children that they are up here. I mean, these women, like you saw, they're not like some mega stars from Washington, D.C. These are moms that got, and I will tell you, like my mother used to say, woe betide you, when she would say that, right? And that meant that you were now on her, list, right? You were on the wrong side of my mother. If you got on the wrong side of my mother, so right now, the federal government is on the wrong side. They're on the wrong side of moms. And I'm going to tell you what, if there's one thing, it's like any human instinct, right? We take care of our children, especially moms. So when we talk about mama bears, we talk about Mothers for America, Women Fighting for America, Moms for Liberty, all these different organizations. So part of what I'm saying up here is not to just the women, okay? Because this is not just about women. This is about men standing up and figuring out what they have to do too and how they get involved, because this is an all-out assault on our country. This is an all-out assault on our children, particularly our children. One of the guys up here, maybe it was Sabatini, was up here talking about enemies. Enemies. I mean, we're talking about enemies in this country as though it's like an actual enemy. Like we used to stand the whatever walls we stood against communism for 40 years, or we stood up against, all these different true enemies of America overseas. And I've been in a lot of different crazy places in the world to basically fight our enemies and stand against it. But now here we are domestically, and we're talking about the other side of the aisle as our enemy. And that's a real tragedy. But I will tell you, the real enemy of liberty is tyranny. Okay? There are enemies out there. And when you see tyranny begin to rise, like it is rising in this country today, and it is real, this is not politics as usual. I'm going to stand up here today and say, I don't know. On a given day, I don't know if the 2022 election is even going to happen. So we're up here, and on one side of my mouth, I say, I want you guys to get out there and fight for these people that are running on an America First platform and running for basically to protect liberty against tyranny. But on the other side of my mouth, I'm like, well, we got to figure out this 2020 election, because there's no way in the world that we voted for this. We didn't vote for this. We did not vote for this. I mean, if you just watch the G20 summit here the last couple of days, it's so embarrassing. As an American, as a guy who served in very, very senior roles in our government, and as somebody who has served on 6 continents and in many, many countries around this world, and I look at the president or a person in disguise. So who's here from the Herald Tribune? Anybody here from the Herald Tribune? Seriously, if you're here from the Herald Tribune, yeah, I mean, maybe they don't have the guts to speak up. But I want to know if there's somebody here from the media, because I want you to make sure that you get my words correct. You get them right. Okay? You get them right. Doug Billings and Ann Vandersteel that you just saw. These are two sort of media. These are media champions. These are people they're in there and they are fearless. They are fearless about what it is that they say and what it is that they believe. Okay? And you heard from them today, and we're all here. All of us here, we're all kind of saying the same thing. We're all kind of saying, hey, you got to figure out what you're going to do. People come up to me all the time, and they say, thank you for your service. I thought about serving one time, or I didn't serve. And I'm like, look, stop. Stop telling me, don't put a guilt trip on me because you didn't serve. So my question back to everybody, and this is being, trying to be nice because I try to be, polite with everybody, that my question back to you is then, okay, that's okay that you didn't. Maybe that's not in your fiber. Maybe that's not in your DNA. Maybe that's not in your makeup. And that's fine. So now the big question is, how do you serve? What was very interesting was, I think Montez Clark talked about, he said, how many are retired? Because he was trying to get a rise out of everybody here, right? So he finally said, how many are retired? A lot more arms went up. Well, let me tell you, folks, you're not retired. If you're living in the United States of America today, you cannot retire. You cannot retire. You do not have a choice. You can sit down here in beautiful Florida, which is where we decided to make our residence. But I'm just telling you that we don't have a choice right now. This country, this is not politics as usual. We cannot sit and say, I'm going to let the younger generation do it. Or I'm going to let the politicians do it. Or I'm going to let those people do it. We don't have that choice anymore. This country is in a period of crisis like we have never been in. Like we have never been in this country. Why? Because all the other crises that we faced in this country, with one exception, and that was the Civil War, when the country was clearly split at a time, and there was a South and there was a North, and there was a set of reasons why they went after each other. So that was the time, not when a part of the country was going to change away from the Constitution. One part did want to change away from the Constitution. But it was a very clear split. Right now, it's very unclear. It's very unclear. So we're not in a precedented time. We're not in a time where we can go, well, this is like the American Revolution, and so let's get back to the Constitution. Or like World War II. Most of everything else we've always done in this country, it's always over there. Okay? And at the time of the Civil War, by one vote only, that war continued. That war continued by one vote. Halfway through that war, because they were going to decide, we'll give up. So there was a period of time in this country where we felt a need to really believe in something, in a vision that was greater than the people that existed at the time. Really, they saw something in us. They talked about it in their papers, they talked about it in their writings, they talked about it to each other, but they were actually speaking to us today. So when you hear these quotes up here by different forefathers or founding fathers, and you hear about all these different things that they thought about, they did. And they knew the enemy. They knew the enemy, and I know the enemy. And the enemy is tyranny. The enemy is tyranny. Go look it up. Go look up what tyranny means, and you're going to see the opposite of that is liberty, is freedom. Our Constitution gives us three things. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the first thing is life. And the ability to be able to practice and be whatever you want to be, right? So I want you to do this because I want to change it up here in a little bit. So I jump into COVID, right? Because COVID is a function of tyranny. It's not a function of health. It's not a function of health. I mean, you had those beautiful children up here today with their moms talking about what they were doing. It had nothing to do with health. It had everything to do with control. So on the count of three, ask me if I've gotten the vaccine. 1, 2, 3.
Have you gotten the vaccine?
It's none of your damn business. Did you get tested for HIV lately? So we are being imposed upon by our government, and I do recommend you go and spend a little bit of time reading the Constitution. It's 4,500 words. Takes about an hour to read it, and the thing that I want you to focus on is what the Constitution says about what the responsibilities are of the federal government. There's very, very few. Yet over time, they've usurped the ability of the Constitution to be able to perform its duty as a document, and therefore they have taken greater control over our lives. Now, how do we get here? We got here because we kind of gave up. Okay? So I'm not one to stand up here and tell you all that it's their problem in Washington, D.C., or it's their problem in Tallahassee, or it's their problem, up in Sarasota at the county seat or whatever. It's not. School boards. Yeah. We're deeply involved in school boards across this country right now. I'm going to talk about sheriffs here in a second. We're deeply involved in school boards across the country because of everything that has been talked about. But you know what? When I look at it, these people on these school boards, and many school boards you'll find have members that are members of the Democratic Socialist Party of America. Okay? The DSPA, the Communist Party of America, started at the turn of the last century. Okay? Started at the turn of the last century before World War I even started. Okay? Because communism was starting to feel its oats at that time. And then all of a sudden, over decades and decades, another sort of offshoot of it is called the Democratic Socialist Party of America. So there are members of the DSPA on school boards across the country. They're right here in Florida. They're right here in this county. So how did they get there? Well, they got there because all of us just sort of said, in fact, you don't even know. If I asked you when the school board vote is going to be in this county, for those of you that live in this county, if I gave you a little test, most of you would fail it. You'd fail it because you probably don't know when the school board election is. Okay? Or how many people are up for the school board vote just in this county. So I am picking on you all like I'm picking on myself because this is how we get involved. Okay? You don't have to be the smartest person. You don't got to be the richest person. You don't got to be somebody, with all kinds of stuff. All you have to do is you have to look at what you have in this country and what we still have, because it's going to be slowly eroded away from us unless we have really, really brave patriots who step up and get involved in the political life of our country. Because really everything that we do in this country has to do with politics. Everything. When somebody says to me, I don't do that political stuff, because I look at them and I'm looking for leaders in this country. And I look at them and I say, well, why don't you run? I mean, God, you've got all the right stuff. You know, you're saying all the right things. I don't do that political thing. And I'm like, well, then, you know what? I mean, I get so irritated, I will say, then get out of my way, because I'm going to go find somebody that's willing to actually, that has the courage to step up. And you see that. You see that with some of these people that are up here today. Because you see exactly what they said. And all these, and this is across this entire country. This is across this entire country. Anybody that's stepping up to run for some type of office, whether it's a school board or whether it's a United States senator, I mean, they're just ripping into these people. They're going after their families. It's death threats. They're trying to take their children. I mean, these are people that are trying to get involved in the lifeblood of this country. Of this country. We cannot have that. The enemy of liberty is tyranny. Do not forget that. I don't want to talk about enemies like a person who's in this party or a person who's in that party. I will tell you that there's a smart thing said by Drew, I believe, that about this independent stuff and you know, you register as a Republican, you register as an independent, you register as a Democrat, but if you're an independent, you can't vote in a primary. So actually, you're giving up something. And in a way, that's our two-party system in this country right now. Now, you can register as a libertarian, you can register as an independent, but when it comes time, you know, that's just not how it's working right now. So until something dramatic shifts in this country, and you really feel like this country is at risk, then you better think about where you're registering or what you're registering as. Okay, because you can always go in the normal election, not the primaries. You can always go and jump ship if you want. If you don't like the person, you can always go to find somebody else, right? You can vote for whatever party, but it's a really smart thing because that's tactics. That's tactics when we talk about winning this country back. I mean, which party did most of these people talk about today? About being useless. Which party? The Republican Party. I mean, why? So I'm not up here to bash the Democratic Party. I'm not up here really to bash the Republican Party. What I am up here to do is to tell you all that if you don't figure out how you get involved in this country, if you can't figure out how you're going to serve this country, and you know, you're looking at a person that my entire life is about service. But it's, you know, it's not over. It's not over. In fact, it'll never be over. For certain of us, it never ends. And so, how do you do it? Who do you engage? How do you get involved? You know, are you registered to be a precinct volunteer, to be a poll watcher? Do you know when they do training for precincts? I can tell you exactly how the Democratic Party does precinct training. And then who they put in charge. And they know in detail. They know exactly where to put people, where to put the thugs, where there's going to be a lot of people voting, and where not to worry about too much because there's not going to be many people voting, particularly in a particular precinct. I mean, this is the kind of detail, this is the kind of minutia that the Republican Party has failed at. Failed. That number, whatever it was, 200,000. These are all over the country that we are not filling. We're not filling. Even though, I will tell you, even though the Republican Party people, you all, we out-register the Democrats, I mean, at a rate of probably about nationwide, probably 4 to 5 to 1. In some states, it's like 20 to 1. Okay, I can tell you, in the prior to the 2020 election, in the state of Pennsylvania, there were 232, from 2016 to 2020, there were 232,000 Republicans, new Republicans who registered between 2016 and 2020. 232,000 newly registered Republicans. Democrats, 21,000. So how did Pennsylvania, you know, I don't want to get into the whole election integrity thing, but this is the level of stuff that we have got to know about. So for those of you that are out here and you want to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? What can I do? What can I do? That's why I say this local action has a national impact. I mean, you see a person like Kimberly. She wrote a scathing letter, and it's a great letter, and I hope you go find her website and throw a little bit of money at them, but also read her letter. It's just awesome. I mean, she calls out the Attorney General of the United States of America. She calls out the President of the United States of America. She calls out the National Education Association. And they back down. They back down. And because of that, you saw 2 committee hearings over the last 10, maybe 14 days, one with the House Judiciary and one with the Senate Judiciary, right, where they were raking over our Attorney General, Garland. And like Ted Cruz said, thank God he is not on the United States Supreme Court. But I ain't all that impressed with our people on the Supreme Court. Okay? So we're in a very, very difficult place. This is not, and I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this. This is a time of crisis in the United States of America. And you all know it. Everybody knows it. Everybody feels it. You may not have the depth of understanding or the network or whatever it is, that the kind of stuff that I get fed on a daily basis, or the kinds of things that we are deeply involved in to try to turn this thing around. I kind of say, it's one county at a time. So I'll talk about sheriffs briefly. Sheriff, his name is Schmalling, up in Racine, Wisconsin. Anybody from Wisconsin? So this sheriff did his own investigation. How many people know about this sheriff up in Wisconsin? Yeah, so good. So about half. So I'm gonna go through briefly what he's doing. So the sheriff's name is Chris Schmalling, Racine, Wisconsin. He did his own investigation because somebody came to him and said, hey, we've got these assisted living centers, and there's like all kinds of votes coming out of them, and it means that that there's probably 7 or 8 people per room in this assisted living center. And so he dug into these things, and he found out there was extraordinary fraud in his county, and he started working with other sheriffs. Okay, he had other sheriffs just to scratch the surface stuff up in Wisconsin. And then they started looking at tenement housing, right? Tenement housing up in his area. And they found tenement housing where there was like 26 units, and there's like 1,000, there's 1,000 votes coming out of those 26 units, meaning that there's like 50 people in every single room. They found probably 30 of those. So he's come now out, and he's presented his evidence, right, as a sheriff. Sheriffs have so much authority, so much power in this country. I'm going to talk about one other sheriff. So this sheriff did this. The name calling, the attacks on this sheriff, who's a duly elected individual, that are now hammering him, I guarantee his family is going to be threatened. His livelihood will be threatened. And he'll have all kinds of hate mail from all sorts of places outside of his county, because I can guarantee you the people in his county probably love it. But that's the kind of push that we need in this country. We need sheriffs. It's called the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. It comes out of something called the Magna Carta, which is a function and a foundational element of our Constitution. The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. Okay, we all know the story of Robin Hood, right? And the Sheriff of Nottingham. Well, he was the bad guy, but in the case of sheriffs in this country, that whole thing was created out of something that happened in the 1200s. So now we start to see sheriffs stepping up. Some of them are not stepping up. The Sheriff of Maricopa County, not stepping up. There's a Sheriff Coe down in what's called Kinney County. It's a border county in Texas, because Governor Abbott has failed to do his duty as a governor. Okay? Governor Abbott has failed to do his duty as a governor. So Sheriff Coe, he basically said, I'm going to deputize 100 men. We're going to do 2 weeks of training. He's got a great background. They're down there training on weapons, or training on communications, or training on operations. And then he's going to put them out on the border. And he actually said, we're going to build a fence around our county that touches the border. And he told his buddies on his north and his south, the sheriffs, he said, They ain't coming in my county. They're not coming in my county. So if they go in here, so be prepared because they ain't coming here anymore. Okay, so that's a sheriff that has the authority, legal authority, constitutional responsibility to do this kind of thing. Again, we were up here, this nation with 13 colonies had, the states have more sovereign authority than the federal government. Because we were 13 colonies, so everybody, when it was created, we were created with sovereign borders. Okay, so every state had a responsibility, and as the Constitution was created, to protect it. So here we have another sheriff, and there's a couple of other examples. There's a sheriff up in Virginia. He's been doing some great things to fight for the Second Amendment. Because the governor up in Virginia, the current governor, said, we're going to come down, we're going to take everybody's guns away. And the sheriff said, not in our county. You're not going to take them from our county. And so that's Culpeper County. Culpeper County. Go look that guy up. He's phenomenal. He ought to be the governor. He ought to be the governor. So all I'm telling you tonight here, with everything that you've heard, and I want to just say, there's a lot of volunteers here, a lot of people that put this thing on, and there's a lot that's going on in this country right now. But when you walk away from these things, these are not cheerleading sessions. These are not pep rallies, really. This is an internal, focus group, right? And I want you to internally focus on what it is that you can do for this country. What can you do? What will you do? What are you able to do? What skill set do you have? And I'm not talking to the people that are younger than me. Okay? I mean, maybe a couple of years younger than me. I'm really talking to my generation. Because my father and my mother, my father's a World War II and a Korea War veteran. And thank God my mother decided to marry him and have 9 children. But I'm telling you, my parents, they turned over, and my parents, as they reflect on and relate to that entire generation, they turned over to us and they said, here's a great country. Go work hard, be good to others, be a lifelong learner, don't ever quit, don't stop, don't complain, get involved. Okay? And that's what we did. Right? That's what we did. So now, my generation, as I look around this audience, my generation is about to now turn over to the next generation, the next 2 generations, the next whatever generations, a country that's a communist country, that's a socialist country. So we still have an opportunity here. We really do. I mean, when Alfie's up here talking, I hope you really paid attention to some of what he said, because it's very, very optimistic outlook, and I agree, because like our buddy Mike Lindell always says, various miracles happen, and these miracles happen, and in a way, I mean, I have a tough time because my middle name is Thomas, so I'm doubting Thomas, right? But in a lot of ways, maybe this is what this country needed, was a good kick in the rear end. Because we still have all of this beauty. We still have all of this stuff. We have it all still. And we look at it and we go, how can they not want this? How can they do this? How can they, and you say, well, nobody would want this kind of stuff. Yeah, communists do. Communists do. Okay? I have had the privilege of serving for this country in a lot of places around the world. And I have been in the worst possible, most depraved countries on the planet. On the planet. I've seen corruption. I've seen filth. I've seen just incredible human behavior that you would never want your child to even understand or to comprehend. And now, as I stand here today and I think about what's happening in our own country, the depth of corruption, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we have a problem, and the problem is in different places in this country. But the biggest problem is complacency. It's our own complacency. So So when you leave here tonight, in this in this beautiful night, and when you leave here and you go away, not just tomorrow, but you think about it. I want this to sink in for the next couple of days. Maybe sink in as we move towards a Thanksgiving, which is a very historic. No other country on the planet celebrates Thanksgiving. Okay, Thanksgiving isn't some international holiday, right? So as we move towards Thanksgiving in the coming couple of weeks here, really, I want you to reflect on what it is that you not can do, but what you must do. And you start to talk to each other about what talents do I have. It doesn't matter what you did. In fact, what you did, it may be part of who you are and gives you the wisdom and gives you some insight and maybe some talent. So leverage it. But now it's what you're going to do. It's what you're going to do. And everybody has a responsibility. I mean, you really do. I want to have a good time like anybody. I want to go and all of the craziness of the career that I had in the military, the madness that I experienced, and my family and I experienced over the last, it's still going on. It's still going on. It never stops. It never stops because they fear the truth. They fear that. That's why they cancel us. That's why they constantly cancel us. So they fear that. And that's what we have to keep doing. So we have to keep having these kinds of events, whether it's here in this beautiful venue here at the Hollow, or whether it's in the state of Oregon or the capital of Arizona in Phoenix, or wherever we're going to go, because we're going to go to all these places. And the message is generally the same. And I will tell you, the response is actually really good. And you saw some of it today. You heard some of it today. These people, these champions, these are champions that you saw today that are up here. And they are, that's right, they deserve a round. So we have to continue to go find more of these champions all over the country, and we are. And when they see and hear examples of two moms who took on, and in about a month, they were in front of the governor of a state having a law signed on school boards. Okay? Now you also heard, I forget which one said it, maybe it was Sabatini, said something about, well, they're right back up to their old tricks here in Florida, right here in this county. Okay? Up in Orange County, I believe, and I think in Broward County. And they're giving the governor of this state that created a law, they're giving him the Italian salute. Now, so if I had Ron DeSantis by his tie, I would tell him, you got to juggle more than one ball at a time, buddy. And you should not let these people give you the big finger, because they are against you. They're against you. I think the world of Ron DeSantis. But I'm going to tell you, if somebody was in violation of a rule that I put in place, or of an order that I gave, and I found out about it, and I hope that somebody's telling him about this kind of stuff, or he's paying attention enough, because these are people that are in violation of a law, not a mandate, of a law. And they're basically telling you represent, the people of the various counties. They're telling you, tough, we don't care what the governor says. That's what they're doing. So that's why we got to be smart. We got to pay attention. You got to read. You got to listen, and you have to get involved. Okay. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a presentation up here. We have a bring that out here, buddy. Olivia, why don't you come out here? Look at this. Look at the Halloween. Yeah. So cute. So Olivia and I became. I actually didn't meet her until a couple of different events later. But when these gals, Kimberly and Em, were talking about Tulsa, that was when I became aware of this young lady. I mean, the story is just unbelievable. It's even worse than what she described. It's horrible. But you see this beautiful little child, and now she's got this level of confidence. And I love, give me your hand. I love the fact that and I do this routinely, bringing children up on a stage, because it's like it instills confidence. You know, she doesn't know what the heck is, which end is up. She just knows that she's standing up here on a stage, and she's happy because her mom is taking care of her, right? So, but this gives confidence to this young lady. And there's like little kids out there. All of a sudden, there's all this forced family fun that's out here today, right? So all these little kids, they're popping up now because they see this little girl up here, right? And other kids begin to realize how important this is. And they see something and they're like, wow, what's happening? What's happening? Okay? And like I say, all the time, the only reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, no other reason. I love this country, but I'm doing this because I have grandchildren, and I refuse to turn this country to my grandchildren, okay, or yours, I guess, to what I know it shouldn't be. So what I'm going to do, this is a replica. It's a gold-plated replica of the beautiful Constitution and the Declaration of Independence of the United States, and it's signed by a whole bunch of people. So I'm going to let you accept it for the hollow, okay, on behalf of everybody out here. And I just want to say to all of you, thank you for all being here today. And, and God bless this country, but get in there and fight. Do not give this country up. All right? Right there. Hold it right there. Yeah.
Fight like a flame.
Good job, girl.
Once again, I want to thank Vic and the team here from the Hollow for this wonderful evening. Thank you all very much for coming. God bless.